exactly. I just turned the recording on. We do record these. We have, I don't even know what our count is up to on our Empire Masterminds page, but it's probably close to 130, 140 people. Um,
Millions.
what? Millions? Wouldn't that be nice? So I think I say this almost every week, but we record these because not everybody can make it live, at this time. And so we do believe that quite a few people go back and watch these recordings, which is super helpful. So good morning, Aaron. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning.
It is 9 o'clock. So let's just obviously be mindful of time. Everybody, welcome to Empire Masterminds. I'm Kelly Domaille with eXp Realty. We've got Bob Snyder on here and his wife are hosts with Bruce and I. Aaron Neubauer with Success Lending is joining us. He loves to give us our little market update for the first couple of minutes of our Empire Mastermind on Wednesday. And then we have a great guest speaker today. So, and Asha works with the Snyder team as well. She's always just a great resource for keeping us on track. So at any time, if you guys have questions, feel free to jump on in during the presentation, but I'll hand it over to Aaron. Give us kind of a what's going on in the industry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, thanks for a couple minutes here today. Just as a heads up, last week we had a dip in interest rates, but then they popped back. As of the moment, we're still right around that 6.99 range for first-time home buyers. The one thing we want to look out for, I don't really see, the Feds aren't going to come out and say anything for another couple months. Everyone wants interest rates to come down. We know it's going to happen right now. The only thing that's really going to move interest rates is just the market itself, a little bit here, a little bit there. Keep an eye on that. Stay in touch with your loan officers, but first-time home buyers are still right around that 6.99 range. I don't project anything major happening until June, to be perfectly transparent. So, don't hold out, don't wait. If someone can get into a house now, do it. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I just don't, we don't have any other reports coming out either or anything like that anytime soon. So I would just keep focused on thinking they're going to be right around that 7% range for now in the foreseeable future.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I did hear maybe sometime end of May, June, but there's no written rule here, right? So
exactly.
Great advice. We'll just keep in touch and certainly if anybody has any questions, if anybody needs any help, reach out to Aaron. Amazing loan officer here, and he's always willing to help with anything that you need and is always available. So with that, we have a fantastic guest speaker today, Troy Emter with Rock Solid Home Inspections. And, in this day and age, and especially now with, NAR and all this good stuff, this is where we as agents really have to provide value as an agent. We have to show our value. And Troy today is going to provide us with lots of tips and ideas and information where we will become a little bit more knowledgeable when we're walking through homes and whatnot to be able to add to our value proposition. So without further ado, welcome, Troy. I'll let you kind of give your background and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me a little bit. And as we go through this presentation, so it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation. I'll share my screen here shortly. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt at any time. Let's just kind of make it a informal little meeting, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. And can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Troy with Rock Solid Home Inspections. We've been around since 2017. Well, let's keep talking about it. We are located in Maple Grove, but we do service the whole Twin Cities areas. But my background is I went to the U of M and I finished out with a drafting degree, and I ran a drafting company for about 5 years based out of Deep Haven. I've been designing and building houses since I was about 20. I did my first one when I was 20, and I really enjoy construction, but I never really wanted to work in it. If that makes any sense. I actually swing hammers, but anyways, I did enough to understand the whole building concept. I went to school for all this. I built houses, every 5 years. I built pretty much every type of foundation, every type of house, so I can understand houses really well. I designed some big houses on Lake Minnetonka for the Carlsons. I designed Pelican Point, located out of Mound. That was a number of years ago. So I have quite a bit of experience with houses. Rock Solid is a multi-inspection company, so we have more than one inspector. We try to locate inspectors throughout the Twin Cities to reduce the drive times and just make it a little bit more convenient for people. So we pretty much have two in the Northwest, one in the Southwest, and one in the Southeast currently. So that's where we're at. We don't want to be a big company. What we want to be is a company that you can call, text me anytime. I answer my phones. We don't have receptionists. We're just a small, quaint little company, and that's what we want. We want to add value. That's really what we want to do. Is I think once you get bigger, you start losing that value added portion of it. So we are all certified. So I have the highest national certification in Minnesota. As you guys all know, you don't have to be certified to be a home inspector. We are all certified. And we do service the Twin City broader area. We'll go pretty much anywhere that you guys need us to go. Once we're in the busy summer season, we can't go to Brainerd anymore just because it takes too much time. But during the fall, winter, and spring, we'll go to Brainerd for people, no problem. We do a lot of big houses up on Gull Lake and whatnot. So thing that we like to boast ourselves about it a little bit is we are 5-star rated with over 1,300 reviews. So we put a lot of effort into our reports. It's all about matching effort. We understand how much effort you guys put into these buyers. We want to match it as much as possible and bring value as well. So when we do inspections, there's never a perfect house. We always want to bring value, meaning this is how you fix it. Here's approximate cost of how you fix it, or to fix it. So what we're doing is bringing value to the client so they can understand what they're purchasing. And last but not least is every inspection, again, matching effort. We give out cakes at the end of every inspection, nothing but cakes.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Yes, to the agent and to the clients. What we want to try to do is promote the agents for being there, because a lot of times these buyers are not always rational when we go through inspection, and they'll twist our words up a little bit coming back to the agent after inspection being like, oh, my inspector says everything has to be fixed in this report. We would never say that. What they're trying to do is just play us against each other. So we always want to encourage the agents to be at every inspection. For one, it's a great educational piece because we do a 1-hour walkthrough and we educate these buyers that we know the house better than a seller's when we're done. So that's kind of where we're at with it. Every house is not perfect. We're going to tell them how the house is functioning, how to repair things, how to anticipate what might happen to this house. If anything happens, they know what is going on, as opposed to start calling contractors to figure out what is going on. So we can kind of predict things a little bit without trying to scare people, but just educating them. So that's where we're at. Any questions so far, guys? Cool. So here's our services. We do quite a few services, and the reason why we do all these services is we want to control the atmosphere of the buy-in process. So we do residential inspections. They start at $435. Our average cost is probably around that $485 for like a 2,000 square foot house. $435 is kind of a rare oddity, less than 1,000 square feet. We do commercial inspections. We are certified for commercial inspections. We've done up to 160 apartment buildings, 88. Commercial industry is really busy right now for us, but we do a lot of them. And what we're doing with the commercial inspection is we're giving the buyers a 0 to 1 year forecast for prices with quotes from actual contractors. So if it needs an HVAC system, we'll actually give you a quote, an estimate on repairing that, so you can negotiate this stuff in there. I've been in the commercial industry for a long time as well, and people just buy buildings without knowing what to anticipate and what time frame to anticipate this stuff in for roofs and all that kind of stuff. And they're all big ticket items. So that's what we love to do with our commercial inspections, is actually bring value to that. Townhouse condos, 335, they start radon testing. You guys all know radon testing. We do that. We do have contractors that we work with that will give discounts for our clients. So if a mitigation system is required, then they get a discount for the mitigation system. Sewer scopes, the same thing. If we have a problem with the sewer scope, we have 2 contractors that we estimate out with, and they'll get 2 bids from us within 24 hours after the sewer scope window if we do have any concerns with it. We also highly recommend sewer scopes on older houses. They're not perfect, so we give older homes a strong leeway, but we recommend insurance riders on our policies, our insurance policies. That's something that's new within the last year. I'm not sure if you guys knew about that, but you can add a main sewer line insurance rider to your main insurance for like $70 a year. So, which helps pay for any kind of major problems with sewer scopes. Level 2 chimney inspections we do. Mold testing. Mold testing is another thing that we like to control, because if you get a mitigation company come in, they're always going to find lots of mold. They're always going to find lots of costs. So what we do is we do our mold testing in-house, and then we have contractors that we work with and send the report to them, and we get estimates that way on approximate costs. Obviously, mold is, once you start tearing into things, it adds up a little bit. Mold testing, you got to be really careful with. It opens a can of worms that we don't always want to go down. So normally what we always tell people that when do mold testing is, let us do the inspection first, let us find any kind of problems. And if we find problems, then we can kind of tell you if there's more major problems with it, with the mold testing portion of it. So stucco testing, that's an invasive testing where we drill holes into the stucco and we get into if there's moisture problems. We try not to do stucco testing on 1950s houses. They normally don't have many problems with it. Once we get into the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that's when we start seeing concerns with stucco. So, and that's our starting price for that. We do water testing. So if you are on well systems, most counties require the sellers to provide this, but if they don't, or if you want additional testing for arsenic, nitrates or something, we can do this for you guys as well. Another service we offer is a home watch service. So this is for your snowbirds that go down south. What we do is we come in, we customize these inspections where we come in maybe every 2 weeks, every week, and we run water, just kind of watch over for pests, run dishwashers, fill P-traps so there's no sewer gases, just an overview of what it is. And we do a full report, and we send pictures and a report to the clients, which are down south. So that's been pretty popular, just so you guys know, and it's relatively inexpensive. I'm not sure if we'd go to Rochester though to do one of these, just because of the cost. Sorry, guys, but what we try to do is keep them closer to our houses. So,
Awesome.
any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question. I
Yeah.
just met with some buyers, so this is very timely.
Yeah.
They are concerned that, how would they know if they're buying an older home, what the pipes are like? You do a sewer scope, which I would assume is from the house to the main sewer, right out to the street. But how would they know if, pipes have issues in the home that we can't see, if it's a really old home?
Yes. So when we do our inspections, what we're trying to do is shock the system within the sewer system, and what that does is it gives us little signs. So if we do have older pipe systems, it gurgles a lot of times with us. We'll have slow drains. The other thing is when we're on a roof, we're making sure that our vents are open, they're not clogged, which is good, preventing problems as well. So a lot of times when we dump all this water into a residential system, it will show us signs of problems. Not always, but sometimes. Once we get into cast iron on older houses, we got to start being a little bit more concerned, because cast iron will rust from the inside out. So they don't show themselves. I've actually had a situation where I've looked at maybe a little crack on a piece of pipe, and I touched it with my thumb and the pipe broke.
Oh,
So
wow.
I put a new
Okay.
system in for them. So we do have to be careful where that one, we can't always determine what is going on, but we can definitely do our best to try to come up with if there is any concerns with how much water we run. So,
And do you do a lot of sewer scopes? Like Bob, do you guys do sewer scopes on your houses up there?
It depends. If it's a neighborhood that's been around for a while, like St. Paul, Minneapolis, built, 1950 or late or earlier, we'll typically do that. We don't necessarily promote it. We kind of leave it up to the buyer to have that conversation with the inspector at that point in time. I think the one thing that you got to be careful of when you're writing up the purchase agreement is that the sewer scope can be technically considered an invasive test, right? So you got to make sure that you have that, you kind of have it covered with, in the purchase agreement stating that you're going to do potentially some invasive testing, probably, and you're probably getting there regarding the stucco testing. We'll learn a little bit more, I'm sure, about that, if that's invasive or not invasive. But it all kind of depends on the vintage of the house, Kelly, as
Okay.
far as the
Yeah,
buyers.
we don't see
You know,
very much of it, but we do have a couple neighborhoods in Rochester where they're known for having potential, you know, they're so old, they're in our historic area. But other than that, we
Yeah.
don't. But it's, you know, it's probably not a bad idea no matter what, especially if you're in a mature neighborhood. You got lots of trees, you got tree roots and whatnot. So
Mhm,
Troy, what do
mhm.
you recommend doing this? I mean, what do you tell people?
Yes, this is a great conversation. I think this is going to be, there's so much information here that we'll probably do another PowerPoint again on something like this. But what we do with our clients is we send out an email after they book with us, educating them on radon, sewer scopes, and all that kind of stuff. What we recommend, anything built prior to 1980, is we highly recommend a sewer scope at that point. Once we get into the 80s, the PVC piping was pretty dominant in that stage. Then PVC piping does have a pretty good history behind it with not having problems unless it's an install problem. So we do run across problems, but what we tell people like Minneapolis, St. Paul, anticipate cleaning your sewer lines every 1 to 2 years, just because of the style of pipe that is in there, the clay style, the clay tile pipe. So that's what we recommend. And then we talked about the insurance rider as well, which is always another backup plan or another deal. But we do a lot of sewer scopes. So just because of people's has history, all it takes is one person to have a sewer line backup and they tell their whole family. So nobody wants that problem when they move into a new house. And so that's where we're at.
Well, didn't mean to
Yeah.
waylay the conversation here, but thank you. That was helpful.
No, this is awesome. So sewer scopes has a lot of value to them. So I would recommend them because the cost of repair is so great. So, and they are responsible for them. So
One more
yeah.
quick question on that. Sorry. How long do those normally take actually to
The
do
sewer
the
scopes?
inspection? Yeah, sorry, to the scope. Yep.
Okay. Well, our residential inspections, we normally do 3.5 hours, and that includes a 1 hour walkthrough. Our sewer
Yep.
scopes, we try to set them up at the same time as a residential inspection, or at half an hour before. Our inspectors are certified for sewer scopes as well, and they all have their sewer cameras with them. So we can throw them in at any time. They're relatively flexible. We can go down small drain pipes if we do have a problem. We can try to investigate right away. So
Gotcha.
sewer scopes normally an hour or less to do a sewer scope. So
Gotcha. Thank you.
okay. All right. You guys good with our services and how we kind of control things and how we use contractors that are trying not to upsell everybody? There's a lot of contractors, so we want to control and protect our clients in a reasonable way. So all our contractors are middle of the road contractors. They're not high end contractors. They're not low end contractors. And to work with us, you have to have a realistic viewpoint of things because not everybody can afford a full sewer line repair or situation where a lot of times we can repair just 4 feet of this and the sewer line is going to be just fine and you're going to save $5,000. So our contractors are willing to do stuff like that. Those are with a liner system. So a lot of no dig options out there now for sewer lines. So all right, guys. So what we're really going to talk about today is the cause and effect of exterior moisture. What I want to do is educate you guys when you come up onto the house, or at least give you my opinion what is going on. When you come up onto a house on what to watch out for, like I was saying earlier, is every house pretty much tells its story right when you walk up to it or walk around it. It's going to tell you its kind of characteristics, how it's going to function. As a designer for many years, we love to build these roof lines that are so fancy from the street, but they're not very functional for our foundation or for our foundation. So we're going to get into this one. Just anybody have any questions or anything right now? Okay, so here's a house that we did inspection on. Right away when we go up to this house, we're going to have 3 high moisture concern areas. So we're going to start with number 1 on the left-hand side. What I'm talking about by high moisture areas is where the roof line pushes a lot of moisture to the foundation or to the exterior of the house to the point where gutter systems really can't keep up in heavy rains. So that's where we have. So number 1 is going to be on your left-hand side. You think of this one as not a major player in this, but what we see with this type of roof line with that one is erosion around driveways. We're a lot of times where we have asphalt that goes right up to the to the driveway or to the garage, we get that erosion underneath that asphalt that happens quite a bit. And this will be a huge culprit for that. The other thing is we get a lot of deterioration on the brick veneer because it's pushing a lot of water against the brick veneer with a roof line like this. And then obviously foundation problems, I mean, erosion of block because of the excess moisture that's pushed over there, or it's settlement of the foundation. So, and then we get to number two, you can see there's like 3 different roof lines that are pushing, 4 different roof lines that are pushing into this area. So when you walk up to the house, I want you guys to be really aware of this one, where right away you're going to see most likely settlement of sidewalks because of a lot of water that goes into this area. Water is the number one compaction for soil. So you put a lot of water in there, and then the steps and the sidewalks are settling. So watch for that. And that's going to give us an indication of how this house is managing the moisture. A lot of settlement in this area. Now we're going to have to really pay attention once we get on into the basement area of this one as well. It's really trapping a lot of water in this area right to the left of the entryway. So, and then we get to number 3 is, again, we're looking for erosion of the steps and the sidewalks from this moisture problem. And the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of times what we can do is just say, oh, this is sidewalk is settling because of the lack of gutters on this house, or the compaction. So if we were to mud jack the sidewalk, that should help, this is why it's happening, and this is what's happening from that, is just kind of educating our buyers right away. And because there's a lot of good houses that have just minor problems, if we can set their mind at ease right away, we highly recommend that. So, and then it kind of helps our inspectors out as well, as there's not going to be a lot of surprises because you guys are so educated in this as well, being like, oh, your inspector is going to talk about this, your inspector is going to talk about this. So as we're at, then we get to number 3 over there. Again, we're putting 3 roof lines right into this area, settlement of sidewalk and steps right there. This one's going to be a little bit different because it's going to push the moisture down the hill. We could possibly see moisture in the basement and settlement on the far right corner of the foundation because of the washout of the water. So that's the things that we're going to be watching for. This is stuff that's going to go through your head as you're walking up on the house. You're not going to verbally say any of this because we don't want to say anything before we see any problems. But this is kind of what we're watching for. Any questions so far, guys? Okay. So, and then once we get into older houses, and the backside of houses, grading and lack of gutters, are a huge problem with houses of older age. So when I say older age, we're going to say 1980s. You hear me say 1980s a lot because it's kind of the transition for things is houses prior to the 1980s. We weren't sealing the foundations back then. So any water that goes against the foundation will come into the foundation, if that makes sense. When sealing, there is a liquid sealer we put on the outside to help manage the moisture portion of it. The other thing is older houses like the 1950s didn't have sump pump systems, or a drain tile system. So water that goes against the foundation doesn't have anywhere to go other than come into the basement. So these are going to be areas as you walk around the outside of the houses, you're going to watch for and take mental notes. So when you go inside the house, you can identify if we're going to have any problems, and you can really hone in on certain areas. For example, like this one around the gas meter right there, we do have a gutter downspout, but it's pushing the water right back against the house. And then all that grading is pushing the water back towards the house. So this house has a high probability of foundation concerns and moisture concerns inside of it. So, and I'm probably not telling you guys anything you don't know at this point, but what we're trying to do is just kind of set the stage here. So any questions?
Yeah, Troy, when did they start doing drain tile around properties? Do you remember, or do you know?
It varied by cities and counties and stuff like that. We always say about the 1980s is when we
Okay,
started
so
seeing
same
more.
time that they started sealing the foundations. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That's when we started paying more attention. People started using their basements for livable space a little bit more. Prior to in the 50s, it wasn't really used for livable space. It was more for storage and canning and stuff. So, okay.
Hey, Troy.
So, yeah.
Super quick question. Actually, it goes to the next slide that you were just going to pop up.
Yeah.
I showed a home yesterday, and just a framing question, I guess, and maybe you know this answer, maybe you don't, but most of the walls are 16-inch on center for the framing. The walls in the basement on this house were 24 inches on center. It was built in 2000. Is that an issue?
That's a really hard one now because you can build walls at 24 on center, but the substrate that you put up against it has to be upgraded to accommodate that span. So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
just like roofing materials when we put our trusses on, they're 24 on center, but we have to put a decking that's thicker than normal. You can go to 16-inch on center on trusses as well. You can go to a thinner decking material at that point. So
Okay.
it kind of goes for, is it a wood foundation?
No, it's a block foundation.
Oh, was it block foundation? Okay.
Yeah, and the three of the four walls were 24, and one wall was 16. So I found that a little odd.
Well, most likely, most of the time basements are constructed by homeowners. So we see everything.
Okay. Okay.
So that's, most of the time you're missing heat sources in basements when homeowners do it because that's one thing they skip. They're just like, oh, just sheetrock over it. And then everything's finished and they realize it's cold down there and there's no heat sources. People
So
forget
the-
about that one.
So then
So-
the question on that is if the new buyers wanted to come in and finish the lower level, would they and they had to have inspections, would an inspector require them to change that framing?
Every inspector is different, every city is different, every district is different. So I can't answer 100% that, but I would have to venture to say no, they would not because it's a non-structural wall.
Okay. Okay.
So-
Good to know.
Yep.
Appreciate
So
that. Thank you.
structural walls, then it gets to be a little bit more, funky because of the fact that is it a 2x4 wall, 2x6 wall, what's a header system on top of it? There's a lot more that goes into it after that. So,
Okay. All right.
so, and then, another great presentation that will probably go down here sometime soon as well is wood foundations. A lot of people don't know how to identify a wood foundation or understanding the design of wood foundations. I've been lucky enough to build 6 of them myself. So I understand, what to watch out for, the spacing of things and how it was built. And people get really scared about wood foundations, and wood foundations are wonderful. They're very warm, they're very cozy, they breathe really well, they insulate really well. And it's just like any foundation, if they're not managed correctly, they fail. So that's why people have a bad reputation, or people have a bad viewpoint of wood foundations because they do see failure, but you can see every wood concrete foundation has failure too.
Yeah, we would love to have a separate thing on that. We have a big builder down in our area that does wood foundations, and they've been around for 30 plus years, and people get really wigged out about it. And they're like, oh, I don't want a wood foundation. And I would always say, if you do your research, you'll actually find that they are warmer. They're a great basement. It's just hard to have people wrap their brains around that. So that'd be a great class for later.
I'm a huge supporter of it. So yes.
We have the same thing up here too with a builder that does a lot with wood foundations as well.
Yeah.
So that would be a great one.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And the biggest thing is identifying, because wood foundations are 90% finished, so they're really hard to identify. So I can walk you through on key things that we need to watch out for. If we don't have for them, then we are going to be a little bit more concerning on things. And walk you through why we space the studs. So Bruce, this is a good one. For spacing on studs with foundations, that spacing's all out the window. It's all based on the soil outside, how deep you're going, all that kind of stuff. We'll go all the way down to 6-inch spacing sometimes on certain soils on wood foundations. So it's all, and I'm not an engineer, just so you guys know, but I've built a few of them.
Awesome.
So this foundation, so you can see this is a typical moisture into a older basement system. What happens with the negative grading or lack of gutters, it puts moisture against the outside of the foundation wall, and then water will go down through the blocks until it hits the footing system and then weeps out through the bottom of the footing systems. So it's very common. And this, you could be behind walls, finished walls with a situation like this. So this is why we do mold testing. If we see water problems at the base of our finished areas, this could be what it looks like behind there if things weren't corrected. So this would be a good example. If we did have problems, mold testing would be a good situation because we have active leaking. Now it's what type of molds, how much mold we have. When we do mold testing, there is no standard that we really go by. The state of Minnesota doesn't have certifications. They don't have levels. It's kind of we use our experiences and our certifications to kind of guide us a little bit. We use the European gauges of things. So we have certain mold counts. So anything under, for example, like 1,000 molds mold counts, as long as they're healthy mold or healthy molds, not dangerous molds, is a pretty standard living space. So every house has mold in it, just so you guys know. And then as the mold count goes up, then we have more concerns. And then every house tells us a story with what kind of mold is in it. If it is an active mold or if it's wood growing mold, or there's so much that goes into mold testing. So that's why the cost is what, and we, yeah, we'll get into that one another time too. That's a rabbit hole that we go into. So we talked about sealing basement. So if we have negative grading on newer houses, we normally don't get a lot of water into our basement systems because of the drain tile systems and the sealant on the outside. These are more older houses that we really want to watch out for. And then as we push water against our foundation, we could run into foundation damage as well. So to manage moisture on the exterior, if we are not seeing foundation problems with cracks and whatnot, a drain tile system is a good option to manage the moisture that's going down from the outside. If you want to put a drain tile system in, the cost for drain tile is about $100 per foot. So if you guys are going to an older house, 1950s house, you see moisture in the basement because of lack of grading or lack of gutters, it's $100 a foot basically to get it in. So that's just kind of a guideline. I mean, obviously you need a contractor to estimate everything, but that's a good guideline. So, and you can just do one wall. You don't have to do all walls. So if you just have the back side of the house that has negative grading on it, or it has a concern area where a hill's pushing down into it, you can just do the backside. So it's pretty important to do. The other option is the grading. Yeah, so we always recommend, if we have water in our basements, number one, add gutters, fix your grading. That's going to be your cheapest options to correct this water problems. Most of the time, water can be directed away from a foundation and fixed. So most of the time when we have water in the basements, because of grading, gutters, downspouts, all that kind of stuff. So gutters run about $20 to $25 a foot. So adding gutters, that's kind of what we're looking at now from contractors. And grading is really difficult to give you a cost estimate because it's not as simple as just grading out 4 feet most of the time. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. And then we recommend putting a poly down and putting your finished scape over top of that. Poly will help direct water away from the foundation as well. So if you have a negative grading, just putting wood chips over it does not fix negative grading, just so you guys know. Still has the water will go right through the wood chips and right into the foundation still. So that's your options for fixing those. So if you're with buyers, if you have water and they love the house, you can give them some numbers right away and see if you guys want to still rent an offer. So foundation cracks. And you guys can watch my time. I love talking, so please just kind of let me know my timing here as we go. So foundation cracks, there's multiple different foundation cracks that you should be watching for. So for example, any crack that is 1/4 of an inch or less, it's pretty safe. We're not normally worried about structural concerns at that point. So, but we are aware of what had happened. We had a failure to the concrete or to the foundation. Fixing the grading, getting gutters, all that kind of stuff is important to prevent future cracking because the structural has been compromised a little bit. But in the industry, the information I get, just so you guys know, is coming from Safe Basements. That's who I work with for my basement contractor. They're very easy to work with and efficient. So it's cost efficient as well. So types of cracks is number 1 and number 4, as you see on the left. Those are caused by stress cracks. So water against the outside of the foundation will put a static pressure against the foundation and cause the horizontal cracks. So that is a pretty indication that lack of gutters, grading, and we're putting a lot of moisture into the soil on the outside. We always see it about 3 to 4 blocks down from the top. Those stress crack or static pressures, or we call them frost cracks as well, because as that moisture is saturated into the soil, it freezes, it expands. We all know that once water freezes, it expands and it pushes in our foundations. So those 2 cracks are pretty easy to fix, if you will, and pretty, we'll talk about costs of repairing those in the future here as well. Once we get to number 3, those are step cracks that go down. those get a little bit more complicated because step cracks could be twofold. One, it could mean the footing system in the corner of the house is settling. If that's the case, we'll talk about the cost of that in the future here as well. It gets a little bit more expensive, but step cracking doesn't always indicate the footing system is settling. It could be a step crack that's from static pressure on the outside as well, but you normally see a displacement with that where the wall's pushed in a little bit. So step cracks with the push in is grading most of the time, putting water against the foundation. Step cracks without displacement coming in could mean the footing system is settling. In general, when we see step cracking with no displacement, you could look at the floor and look for cracks in the floor because most of the time the floor will crack and settle as well, along with that. So number 2 and number 3 kind of go hand in hand. So this gets a little bit more complicated. Do you guys have any questions on this one? All right, sounds good. So horizontal cracks. This is how we recommend to fix it. There's a lot of different companies out there that have a lot of different opinions. So please just take my opinion as one of the opinions out there. So these are carbon fiber strap systems. These are put up against the foundation and they ran bars back into the soil. And these are so cost of something like this. So if you see a horizontal crack that's more than 1/4 of an inch, we recommend a strap system at this point. Strap systems are every post that you see right there is $850 to install. So for example, like this one would be, I don't have the math in front of me, but basically $2,500, $2,600 to install something like this. So just to give you an idea, so if you have a whole 30-foot wall that has a horizontal crack, then this is a good system to go through and resupport it. This resupporting is basically they put those carbon fiber straps in there and we just resupport the wall. And they guarantee them for life and they can be corrected. So they give you torsion bars where you can come through and tighten things up and try to get that wall back up to straight. The other thing that's important is sealing those cracks so water doesn't come in. Now we have an open crack in our foundation, so grading is still important to manage on the outside, and gutter systems because those cracks are present at that point. So water sealing is pretty important. And that goes for newer houses that have a water sealing system on the outside as well. So any kind of questions here? No? Okay, the spacing is, so the bar spacing that you see there can never be more than 6 feet apart, just so you guys know. We can't do like a 10-foot span. They have to be within 6 feet, 4 to 6 feet. So just so you guys know, if you were to price out a foundation wall and it's 30 feet, you need them every 6 feet roughly. So to give a ballpark, again, your contractors, you got to get a solid estimate from your contractors. So, but okay, so now if we have the step cracking, here's another system that pushes it up. These push pier systems work really well for lifting up foundations. Most of the time when we have a settlement of foundation, it was built incorrectly because of the soil that was the footing systems were put on were over excavated and it settled over time, or a lot of times gutters will dump a bunch of water into the corners of the house and start settling the footing system. And the water is very intrusive portion of it. So these systems get a lot more. So when you have step cracking and cracks in the floor, it gets a little bit more expensive. And this system for repairs starts at $12,000 for a very minor corner crack. Starts at $12,000 and it'll go up to $50,000 relatively fast. So the settlement of the foundation footing system gets a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit more difficult to estimate, but just so you know for sure, it's $12,000. So it's not a $6,000 fix, you know, kind of like the other system with the horizontal cracks.
So Troy, I have a question. What if you have a slab on grade? I mean, you still have footings and
Yep.
whatnot, but you know, if you've noticed like one corner of the house because maybe the grade has gone off or whatever, and that's settled, you know, what about that? Is that something where this system would help? Or, I mean,
100% the system would help with that. And we see a lot of slab on grades that settle. So, so it's very common. So because the footing system still has to be below our frost line.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so it's going to be a little bit less expensive to fix because we're not digging down as deep as a full basement. But again, it gets more complicated and more expensive really fast. So, okay. So any other questions on this? Are you guys finding this useful?
Very
Good.
useful.
So that's pretty much the end of it. I wasn't sure on how much time I really wanted to spend at. I was told about 30 minutes, something like that, 30 to 45 minutes. So hopefully I stayed within that time frame. Here's my contact information. So if you do have any questions, this is my cell phone number. My company, my main line is my cell phone. My wife hates it, but again, this is the type of business I want to run, is being able to answer my questions in text messages. If you guys are out and about and you guys see something that you normally don't see, text it to me and I can answer relatively quick. Phone calls get a little bit difficult because I still do inspections. We don't answer our phone during inspection, so text messages work a little bit better. I can reply back by text messaging. Emails, I'm not very good with emails. I'll be straight up honest with you guys. So,
I
but
have a quick
Be the
question.
trend.
I have a quick question. I recently had an inspection they found a bat up in the garage attic. Is it true you have to have a certain bat, like person to get rid of them?
it is true. Yep, it does. Because you just don't get rid of bat. I mean, you do get rid of bats, but the problem with bats is what they do is we do like a chicken wire at their entrances. So, and we set up this chicken wire so they can get out, but they can't get back in. So, situation. So it's really hard for the homeowner to be able to manage that. And then every crack the size of a pencil, they can get in pretty much anywhere. All has to be sealed up for the function to work correctly. So
Isn't it true as well with bats that you can't like just exterminate them because they're protected?
yes, that is. That's from what I hear as well, but I'm not a certified pest guy. I hear the
Is
same
it true
thing.
if you have one bat, usually there's more?
Yes, 100%. So we see bats quite often in attic spaces, and there's never just one.
Okay, interesting.
So the other thing I want to point out is our website is on here. We do online booking, which works the best for us and for your clients. If you could direct them to our website, and then they could book the times that they would like, that's going to come up available for the inspectors as well. It's just going to lock in a time for you guys, because if you're texting me and I'm working all day and I don't get to it till 6 o'clock and you want it tomorrow morning inspection time, it could fill up by the time I get to that text message. So online booking will hold the times for you guys as well. So
Troy, I have a question. I have a question for you real quick. If you're good, are you still good on time? Like we can
I'm
answer.
really good on time. Yep.
We got
Right,
15 minutes.
excellent.
Yep.
So, we've had a few inspection companies that we've referred to our clients, and what we try to do as agents is we want to be a resource for them, but at the end of the day, we want the buyer to choose the inspector that they want to work with, helps us with liability, etc. The problem is a lot of these inspection companies are always upselling services and many times offering services that may or may not be required, i.e. a sewer scope for a home that was built in 2018. How do you handle that piece of it with the client? So if I was going to refer you a buyer, I'm like, hey, give Troy a call, or we book it online. How does that process work with you interacting with the client typically?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So we are not an upsell company. I straight up, like I said, a lot of people will select the mold testing right away, and I just come back to them and say, let's just do the inspection first, and then we can do the mold testing, unless you have major health concerns. And then at that point, we don't mess around with it. We do mold testing to tell them exactly what's in the house, because we don't know what affects them exactly at that point. It could just be a level. But so what we do in our process is, one, we send out an email, kind of walking them through radon, sewer scopes, all our services. So we educate them as much as possible. And then if they start selecting things, for example, like if you have a 2020 house, and they start selecting the radon, the sewer scope, and all this other kind of stuff, I will give them a call and being like, hey, just so you guys know, and I just did this yesterday on the townhouse in Maple Grove. The lady selected everything, and we back down to a residential inspection at the end of the day, because the house was so new. The sewer line normally doesn't have a lot of problems with it. But again, that's something that we cannot visually see, and we can't 100% tell them. But we also talk about insurance riders on your main insurance for your sewer line. They're $70 a year. If she does have any problems with that, that she does have a assistance program with insurance to help her out with that. So it gets really difficult with sewer lines just because of the fact that people are like, well, what's the condition of it? Well, we can't tell you 100%. You have to run a camera down it. So, but like I said, 1980s and after, we normally don't see a lot of problems unless we have installed happens a lot of times when we install the pipe is we dig this trench and then we start putting their pipe in there. And if they overdug it, a lot of times what they do is they just build up 1 foot sections and set a pipe on there and then try to fill around the pipe. Most of the time what it does is settle the pipes down and creates bellies. So, but again, PVC is pretty resilient and those bellies normally flow pretty good still, just because of the type of material it is. But we see bellies quite often in PVCs. We normally don't see breaks. And the other thing is rocks. If the pipes are put on rocks, it'll put big dents into the pipe and has a possibility of breaking down the road as well. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Bob, but it gets complicated. You know, radon, we can't visually see or smell or anything like that. So if they're concerned about it, it is what it is. But mitigation systems are in place in a lot of newer houses, all the newer houses by code. So at that point, it's kind of like, do you spend $200 on a radon test, or if you're concerned, just put a fan in for $400. So that's what I always tell people. If it's a 2022 house, just put a fan in. It's going to take care of it. So
Yes. No, that was very helpful. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
Troy,
So
and
like I
I
said-
apologize if I missed this, but so you do the mold inspection or you do the radon inspection. Do you do the mitigation as well, or do you just, okay, so you don't do both, right? Which
We
sometimes
don't do
people think
that.
that's
I think it's a conflict of
interest.
interest. It'd be really smart business plan for us to do it, but I think it's a conflict of interest. That's why we
Agreed.
work with contractors directly that believe in our same viewpoint of things. So, and fall into the price range that I think is a reasonable price range as well. So radon, you can get systems up to $4,000 for radons and get them down to $1,500. So most of our radon mitigation systems are $2,000 to $2,500. The people that we recommend out. So, and that's with a discount because they don't have to pay for referrals if they come directly from us. So they give the discounts to our clients.
Nice.
So.
Good.
So same thing with sewer scopes. It's the same thing as we give you quotes from contractors that we believe are treating our clients the best, and your clients as well. So the biggest thing at the end of the day is if you do your job right and we do our job right, we're heroes and we're going to be referred out. That's our goal. I mean, that's what we want to do is match effort, and we know where our business comes from. If we're not doing a good job and being thorough and explaining things and giving all the information correctly to our clients, it's not going to make you guys look good, and then neither one of us are going to get referrals. So that's where we put a lot of time and effort into our walkthroughs and understanding. Like I said, we're not here to upsell because that looks bad on you guys. So.
Now you
So-
mentioned earlier that you could show us like how to age mechanicals, like looking at the furnace and whatnot. So I mean, I know everything's kind of got, I mean, different brands might have different codes in terms of how to look for the age on a furnace. The water heater is a little bit more straightforward most of the time, but any tips on that?
Well, so what we use is you can just look at all the serial numbers on the furnace and the water heaters or any of the appliances for the most part have the year, the week, and the year advertising their serial numbers. So if you have a Rheem water heater, you can just type in Rheem water heater age, and then it's going to pull up an option for selecting intelligence program, and you select on that website and it's going to go through your serial number options because they probably have like 6 different serial number changes to age something. And so you just Google it and then look at your serial number and compare it to what it is, and it'll tell you exactly what the year it was manufactured. So I can definitely do another presentation on that one because that's really shows a lot of value. What we're trying to do is if you guys could eliminate a lot of surprises up front before they put an offer in, it makes our job easier and it makes your job easier too. So if we know the furnace is 20 years old, they don't have to hear it from us and be like, oh my gosh, because the service life on furnaces are 15 to 20 years and it's dropping, that's kind of where it's at.
Well,
So.
and in our, market where things are pretty competitive and people are going in sometimes without inspections, it's
Yep.
helpful up on the front end, if we're able to say, oh yeah, the furnace is this old, because unfortunately, which I disagree with, our disclosures do not require the sellers to put the ages of their mechanicals other than the roof, right? Their guesstimation. And it's, I just think that's silly, right? They should have to put the ages of the main mechanical systems. But anyway, you know, if you don't know how to find that or what to look for, I think that's unfortunate, right? I mean, we need to be better. So this is great.
Yep, absolutely. So we're just doing everyone a service, the more knowledge we have and what we can do. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
invasive inspections, you know, we touched on that a little bit. Invasive inspections. Try to write up offers with invasive, just kind of write in over already. So then if we do need to do a sewer scope, it doesn't come back and, you know, be like, oh, now we got to go ask for invasive inspections. Or, you know, if it is a stucco house in the 2000s or 90s, throw the invasive in there right away. It just kind of shortens our whole process down. Because once we talk to them about a stucco house in the 1990s or they Google it, the whole world is, you know, the stucco houses in the 90s are all bad. That's what the internet says.
And
So
you
if
said
we
after the 80s, stucco wasn't bad after the 80s?
that's when we start getting into after the 80s, yep, earlier.
Okay.
That's kind of where it's at. We don't see as many concerns with it for structural deterioration. So at least with my experience. So other people might have different opinions, but my experiences are those houses are meant to breathe a little bit more, and any moisture that gets in there breathes. We should be sealing up cracks with stucco still, so there's still maintenance that needs to be done on stucco, but they tend to breathe a little bit more. I'm talking like a 1900s stucco house. We normally don't see too many problems with those things, but again.
Well, this is a great recommendation to do invasive for sewer scope. We don't do a lot of them here, but I never would have thought that as an invasive procedure or inspection. So that's a really good tip. So we've always used it for stucco. So
yeah, most sellers just kind of let it go by. But every once in a while we get one that are like, nope, that's invasive. You can't do it. And like, oh gosh.
yeah.
So
Okay.
if you guys can just start writing them, and a lot of agents are starting to write in invasive right into every purchase agreement. So that means that we can open up the attic access as well. You know, because a lot of times we'll have sealed attic accesses. Once we get in newer houses, we don't recommend breaking the seals, just because of the process in place and how the attic functions more with these newer houses. It's so important to keep that attic sealed than us getting into it. So that's where we're at. But older houses, it's so important. So to get into the attic space.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Troy, I
really
know you
tells us.
also had maybe mentioned something about just kind of how to look at windows and get a feel for age or, you know, the condition of the windows, which I know is kind of the same thing. You can't always know for sure, but just for,
Yep.
I think that's one big thing that can be a humongous cost that people don't always know to look for.
Yes, aging windows gets a little bit difficult. So what we do in an inspection is we open and shut every single window because the ones that you don't do are going to be the ones that don't work. We're checking the seals, making sure they're not brittle. Because if you open up a window and you feel brittle seals, that's kind of telling us the window's not as functioning as intended. Moisture is going to come in, air leaks going to come in, frost is going to get in there. But a lot of the windows have their numbers, their dates on inside the windows as well. So you can look in the corners of the windows and you'll have dates in the manufacturer or in between the window panes. They'll have dates and stuff in there as well. So you can age those. But most of the time, you know, from the old clad style casement windows, where we had aluminum on the outside, wood on the inside, where we see the moisture or the dry rot on the bottom side of the windows, most of the time that can be changed or reduce the amount of moisture coming in by there's caulking on the corners of the windows that wears out after about 10 years. So just adding some caulking to those corners out there will prevent that water from coming in and rotting out the bottom side of those casement windows. So that's something that's really easy to fix, and it causes a lot of damage. So we do talk a little bit about options for repairing windows. So a lot of times if the window is a casement window and the bottom is rotted out, you can replace the sashes. So you don't have to replace the whole windows as an option.
Right.
So that's a huge cost savings. I used to talk pricing on those a little bit, but contractors' pricings have gone up and I lost track of where they're at right now. But normal window sashes are approximately $300. than labor to replace them. That's kind of where we're at. It gets quite a bit less than changing out whole windows. But now changing sashes throughout a whole house, now it starts getting to be pretty close to you change the windows out, with
Sure.
new at that point. But just replacing a few of them, it's way better to do the sashes as opposed to replace windows. So
Gotcha. So if you just see a little that moisture that, is not uncommon in a wooden framed window,
yep.
it doesn't necessarily have to be a cause of panic. You can caulk some areas and
Yeah, you can cock it so where the two metals come together and the bottom side of that window, they've changed it now. The design has changed now for the window manufacturers. Now we don't have the same problems, but in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, they were just caulking those outside. It was a maintenance item.
Okay.
So as soon as that caulking wore out, it allows the water to get from the outside into the corner of that window sash and come into the wood.
Right.
So just caulking that goes a long ways. So we've actually, I don't know if you guys remember that October 13th storm of this last year with the heavy rains and the winds.
Yes.
We've gotten a lot of calls for windows where like I lived in this house for 20 years, my windows never leaked. And then that storm came through and that driving rain it was like streams of water coming in from there. And I was like, just go get a tube of caulking and they're like, and spray some water on it later. And they're like, it fixed. So like, yeah, it was pretty easy.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
and that's kind of how we operate our inspections is we walk them through. We try to be realistic with things. It doesn't always pan out for us because sometimes it comes back and be like, oh, I know you told me to do this. I didn't do it. Now we have bigger problems. And, now it's, people like to
Yeah.
blame other people. So we do try to take a realistic viewpoint on things, but it does bite us in the butt every once in a while. So,
Yeah.
but it's my business, so I get to operate it how I want.
That's right.
Well, we appreciate when inspectors don't just strike fear about every single thing. I mean, it's good to know the problems, but we also don't want to just scare people when there is a solution like that or something,
Yes,
So-
absolutely. And I feel the same way. I mean, that's how I feel. Is that
Like-
scare tactic is just a
Yeah.
way a company manages their liability. So
Well, and it's
So-
just expectations, right? I mean, us as agents preparing our clients to have realistic expectations. I mean, I don't care if the house is new or not. You have so many hands that go into the building process of a home, right? There's gonna be things that either might be missed or whatever, but it's not the end of the world, right? There's a way to fix almost everything. So it's just a matter of going in with realistic expectations and then having the right inspector who can present the issue that comes up and the potential, options for addressing those things. So
Yeah.
that's great.
And the nice thing that we do with our reports, so I designed our report about 3 years ago now. We color code everything. So we put everything into perspective. So a red is going to be something that's a big ticket item or a safety concern. Those are things that should be negotiated, in kind of or that they should be aware of that they're buying into, not necessarily negotiated. That's not our job to negotiate. And then we have yellow, which is kind of a recommendation for improvements, maintenance items, sealing concrete, so driveways, we talk about sealing the cracks in the driveway because water continues to get down there. It's going to keep eroding it. So those are just maintenance recommendations. If they don't do anything, it's going to get worse. And then blue is just kind of comments about the property, meaning that if there's some small cracks in the walls, that's just expansion contraction. It's not a structural concern. Just repaint things a little bit. So that's what we do we do have 40-page reports, but it's condensed into, you select on a button and it just loses all that other stuff that we put in there, what we inspect and all that other, and it just gives you this is what's going on with this house. So
Awesome.
really easy to read. So
Perfect. Any other
Yeah.
questions for Troy as we're getting to the top of the hour here before we head out?
So
Awesome. Well, Troy, this has been super beneficial. I'm going to tell you, I've been in the business a very long time and I have 2 pages of notes. So I picked up some fantastic tips just from ages, like 1980s or before or after. I mean, those are things that I didn't know, kind of that cutoff. And I get it's just a generalization.
it is
But
just general.
yeah. So, I mean, there were some great things that I got from your presentation today. So thank you so much for being with us. Obviously, you guys, on the screen is Troy's information. If he can help you in any way with your clients, do not hesitate to give him a call. I know we're down in Rochester, Troy, and you're not here. I wish you were. But I may still call you or text you if I've got some questions. So if you guys Yeah, if you guys have any questions at all, just feel free to reach out to us or Troy directly. So,
Real quick, could I just jump in real quick, Troy? How many
Yeah.
inspectors do you have? Maybe I missed that. How many inspectors do you have on your team?
We currently have 4 at this point.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
Okay.
so we actually have one inspector, James. He's located down in kind of Young America area. So going to Rochester is probably not that far for him. So
okay.
I'd have
Awesome.
to do the math on that, but he comes to the cities all the time. That's like an hour.
Okay, so maybe.
So
Might be closer.
Yeah.
yeah, it might even be closer. Who knows?
Well,
I'd have
this
to
is
look at
good
it.
because my main inspector is probably going to retire in the next year. And so I've been sitting there going, oh my gosh, who are we going to go with? Because plan B and C aren't so great. So, yeah, so this will be lovely.
Well, we put a lot of effort into it. And that we're still human. We're not perfect, but if we do have concerns or clients that are not happy, we normally just take care of it right away. A lot of inspection companies would be like, "Oh, sorry, we missed that. Here's your money back for the inspection." We don't have a lot of callbacks. I'll be honest with you. We put a lot of time and effort. I have processes in place that we have a checklist of things that when we go into a room, so we don't miss things, but we are human still and things do happen. And we'll go out and fix things if we need to. That's just kind of where we're at. We want to make sure the clients are happy because again, if we leave an unhappy client, they're not happy with you and we're not getting referrals anymore. And you know how our referral business is. It's for us, it's like 36% of our business is referral.
Right.
So we get where we did their brother and they're like, oh, you have to use this inspector, even though they use different agents. So we get a lot of referral business. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I
Thanks,
can see
Troy.
why. So.
yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks,
Yeah, well,
Troy.
thank you
Thank you.
so
This
much. You
was
guys have a
great.
great rest of your week and we'll join you next week, Wednesday morning. Thanks again,
All
Troy.
right.
Really
Hey, Kelly.
appreciate
Troy.
it.
Yep,
Bye,
Kelly,
guys.
if you just want to come up with another training one, let me know. So
I would love it. If you want to just shoot actually what I'll do, Troy, is I'll email you
Yeah.
some times, like the openings that we have remaining, and we'll get you on the calendar, whatever works for you.
yeah, so maybe at your next meeting you can ask, where would they like to be trained at? And then we can maybe focus on that and we keep plugging away at things. So
Perfect. Well,
we're
I
all
think
about
that wood
education.
foundation, the wood foundation is a definite must because that's very big down in our area for sure.
Yeah.
So
That's I'm supposed to be writing a whole thing for the state of Minnesota. And we've been
okay,
so busy, I haven't done that. So this will help me push to that state of Minnesota one as well. So
awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you, Troy.
it was very nice meeting you, Kelly. Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you too. All right. Bye-bye.